It's one of the most extraordinary moments in Britain's history. Prime Minister Boris Johnson refusing calls from his own cabinet to resign. Nine's Brett McLeod is outside the Prime Minister's residence. Brett, the Queen could be dragged into this mess.
Yeah, this is the site of one of the highest wind speeds ever recorded by man.
Arson could be the cause of a fire at the Sydney home of controversial comedian, commentator and YouTuber Friendly Geordies.
Supine protoplasmic invertebrate jellies.
And to get hot, I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man.
The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of Ukraine.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
Hello and welcome to the 9th episode of the Fence Sitters podcast with myself, William Brooke, and our other co-host.
It's me on location today in that great outdoors of some random person's backyard in Clarkson. How are you doing today, Will?
Yeah, I'm very good, Tiago. Thank you very much. That's right, Tiago is on the move. He's gone further north in Perth, to the very interesting suburb of Clarkson.
One of my favourite songs is about this suburb, so that's pretty cool.
Is that perhaps not very well known West Australian band that your dad was friends with or something?
Yes, I think you're thinking of the right people. Yes.
Okay, what are they called again?
Sly Withers. Shout out on the Fence Sitters podcast.
Yeah. Shout out to Sly Withers. I'm impressed that I remembered that.
Yeah, I'm impressed. That's such an obscure piece of knowledge to remember.
Yeah. It's also not bad, assuming it's 18 past 6 in the morning for me here in Aberdeen.
Yes,
so,
and it's a brisk 1 p.m. here in Perth.
A brisk. Yeah, okay. Anyway, before we ramble on about nonsense for too long, because that's not what we do on this podcast at all.
Most of the time.
We'll dive right into it. So, Tiago, take us away with whatever you've been reading or watching or artistically consuming.
Well, since we've done what we're reading and watching, it's been like 3 weeks, so quite a bit. I think
there you go.
Something of note is I went to the In the Pines festival on the last Sunday, which is a festival put on by the radio station RTR, basically showcasing a bunch of West Australian acts, and I must say it was even though I had to enter the disgusting campus of UWA and face all those that dwell there, I had a very good time. It was very relaxed, laid back, very, very hippie. It's a couple of highlights. Noah Dillon played at the end. He was very good. There was another band. Let me find what it's called. Actually, I won't. I'll put it in the show notes. But they were this weird alternative electronic band, and they came on stage with all these obscure instruments, and half of them weren't wearing any shoes, and there was one guy, if anyone follows me on Instagram, he was playing the egg shaker throughout the whole set, and it was marvelous. Wow. But yeah, that was that. Also, I've watched the new Auntie Donna show, only available in Australia on iView, unless you use a VPN, Auntie Donna's Coffee Cafe, which I really enjoyed, but would never recommend to anyone. It's not particularly accessible.
Do you want to explain what Auntie Donna is to perhaps our 4% of non-Australian viewers?
Yeah, so Auntie Donna is, I guess they're a sketch comedy group, right? But they, it's not when you and your mum go to the supermarket. Well, it might be that, but then it's always devolves into very strange, uncomfortable, weird sort of humor that, some people love it and some people hate it. And, I fall into loving it. I'll say my highlight from the show, and this will give you kind of an idea of what they're kind of all about, is they there's a guy, and he steals blueberries off a muffin, and he comes into the cafe and steals a blueberry. So they go into a court trial, and the court trial goes on, and then they call recess, and then they're all out in a primary school, like playing and laughing and running around, because that's like the joke is recess. And then one of the members, Mark, goes into a bathroom, and when he comes out of the bathroom, no one that was at the court is there, and he's like a fully grown man. And one of the ladies that works at the school says, "Oh, do you have a visitor's pass?" And he's like, "Oh, no." And then he's like, "Oh, are you here to pick someone up?" And he's like, "No." And it's just like the really long, drawn out, uncomfortable scene of them trying to like work out what this grown man is doing at a primary school. And it's like super realistic and like really well acted and like just like the most uncomfortable thing you ever watched in your entire life. And that's pretty much a good summary of what Auntie Donna is.
Yeah, no, that's very good.
Anyway.
I mean, I think they've called themselves absurdists before.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, very good. I am quite the fan every now and then. So yeah. So what have I been up to? Well, I've started watching a TV show. It's kind of an older, well, not that old. I think it was like 2012 is when it first came out. It's called Endeavour.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a classic murder mystery set from 1965 to 1972 in Oxford, in England.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's this kind of classic detective called Inspector Morse, and he works for the Oxford City Police. And there's a whole bunch of books on him, and they made a more modern kind of adaptation. But then Endeavour is like the prequel, and it shows him as like a young guy kind of rising up through the Oxford Police. So Sean Evans, he's not that well known, I guess, but he plays the main guy. And then Roger Allam, who I quite like as well, and again a little less known. He's like his kind of superintendent. And I've only watched 2 episodes so far, but it's quite haunting. Because they make very good use of music. So Inspector Morse has a great love of well, he's young, but he has a great love of classical opera and romantic opera. So the music pretty much behind all the episodes is kind of quite eerie opera.
Yeah.
And so it's quite good. And sometimes, I mean, I don't want to call it low budget, but these not particularly well budgeted British TV shows can be a bit drawn out, or the acting might not be that great.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of that in this, but it's still got a kind of rustic charm. Like it, everyone on screen is obviously trying to make it look good.
Yeah.
And there was a scene at the very end of the second episode where the main guy, Inspector Morse, and his superintendent, the Roger Allam guy, they're up on a roof, and Roger Allam was almost pushed off and killed. And earlier in the episode, there was a family scene where Inspector Morse gets invited in to Roger Allam's family to have dinner and whatnot, and they were talking about leaving the job at the door, and they're up on this roof. And Inspector Morse is like, how do you do it? How do you leave such a consuming job like that? When you're trying to find a murderer, all you can think about every second of your life is who the murderer is. But it's how do you separate your life from your work and your family from your work? And it just made me think about that interesting trope of, maybe artistic types or political types are really ambitious people who just get completely consumed by their career. So yeah, interesting little thoughts like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, shall we jump into the news then?
Yeah, and without further ado, let's segue to the
yes. Our famous not so sensitive segues are back.
Are we famous for? Okay.
I don't know. I feel like they've happened a fair bit on this show.
Yeah, perhaps.
Listen, we make it look easy, but it's not that easy.
Oh, we make it look real easy. We make this whole job look easy. That's just how great we are.
Yeah, well.
So,
what can you say?
So Sudan. Should we? Do you want to do a little introduction on Sudan, Tiago?
Could you do the introduction on Sudan, because I'm not fully filled in properly.
Alrighty. So we'll do a bit of Sudan. So for those who are living under a rock, Sudan it's more or less fallen into all-out civil war. Also for those living under a rock, if you don't know where Sudan is, as some people don't, it's below Egypt. It's above South Sudan, would you believe it, which itself is above Ethiopia. And then it's east of Chad, your favorite country, Tiago.
Yes.
And then I think the Central African Republic as well. So anyway, and then to the east of Sudan is the Red Sea, which is very strategic, and more of that later. And then from the Red Sea, you go on to Saudi Arabia. Anyway, so that's where Sudan is. Very interesting place. It has 48 million people, which is the third largest population within Africa. So it's actually, in regards to the continent it's on, it's a pretty big country, has a pretty large population, and is worth, knowing stuff about. So, pretty much, there was this guy called Omar al-Bashir, and he was the more or less military dictator in Sudan from 1989 to 2019. So he was the de facto military dictator for quite a while. And then, this is just a crash course of the history, really. In 2019, there was an uprising, and the military again kind of stepped in. And so in 2019, what happened was the military kind of government and then the civilians came together and said, alrighty, we the civilians, we have the democratic mandate, but then the military has power, they have control, they can offer stability. So they came to the conclusion that there'll be a joint military-civilian government to enforce almost kind of democratic stability throughout Sudan. And then they were like, alrighty, well, we'll do that for now, and then we'll hold elections maybe around like 2021, 2022. So, I mean, already you can see where this is going. So, 2021 comes along, and there's some more protests, and because the civilians are like, yo, it's probably time that you give us an election, and the military was like, I don't think so. So there were more protests, the military cracked down even more, and then as before it was an equal military-civilian government, the military just fully took control and there was no civilian representation at all. So that's a little bit of the general history. But an important point is this. So now the military is in full control, and it's like, okay, sure, the civilians are gone, but surely it must be quite stable now that there's a single power controlling everything. The military itself is divided into two. So in command of the Sudan Armed Forces, which estimated reach about 200,000 people, armed men. So this is like the normal just armed forces, is General Abdel Fattah Burhan. He's the commander of the General Armed Forces. So you've got him, and you've got another guy, General Mohammed Dagalo, which everyone just calls Hemeti for some reason. So I'm just going to call him Hemeti.
Yeah.
So you've got Abdul Fattah and Hemeti. And Hemeti is in command of a thing called, and this is where we get into some lovely complicated acronyms, the Rapid Support Force. So stay with me. This is the RSF, the Rapid Support Force, which is like this paramilitary, not fully under control of the General Armed Forces. So it's like its own separate wing. And they number about 100,000 people. So they're about half the size of the General Army, but they're almost kind of fully independent. And they're a little bit dodgy. I mean, everyone's dodgy. But the RSF are particularly dodgy because they have links with Russia, and they have links with the Wagner Group, which, if you don't know, is a Russian paramilitary kind of private military force, which is currently fighting in Ukraine and has been, sighted over Africa and pops up in Syria and lots of dodgy places. So the RSF has these Russian connections, and then you've got General Abdul, who has the normal army. And more or less what happened a few weeks ago was General Abdul tried to integrate the RSF into the normal army and tried to kind of destroy that threat. So Hemeti freaked out about this and thought it was a power grab. And so in response, he kind of deployed the RSF all over Sudan. And then General Abdul was like, well, why is he deploying his paramilitary force all over my country? So then he put his military on high alert, and then the Rapid Support Force was on high alert, and then all that really needed to happen was, one tiny little bit of miscommunication, and the whole thing went tits up, more or less. And now, hundreds of civilian casualties, hundreds of military casualties. The Sudanese economy has, tanked, and it wasn't doing very well before. Civilians fleeing. It's not great. It's not great at all.
So, what sort of outcomes would we be looking at as a resolution to this ordeal?
Well, it's quite difficult to answer that question. I suppose you could argue that this General Abdul guy and Hemeti, they did kind of stand side by side in power for a number of years, kind of putting up with each other. So theoretically, they should be able to do it again. And I suppose if you got some big international power brokers in to make a deal between them with concessions for either side, that might happen. That might be able to occur. The only thing is, and this is quite sad and is kind of the way the world's going, you might actually have to even look at getting Russia or China or Iran, Saudi Arabia, one of those more non-Western countries in to broker that agreement.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, because the two sides of the Sudanese military are pretty opposed to the West, and Russia and China both have interests in Sudan, so that might, something along those lines might occur. Which would be interesting. Another point is that the Russians were actually building a port on the Red Sea in Sudan, so that also has their interest there.
Okay,
And the really important thing with that is that, I don't know the percentage, but it's a massive percentage of the world's oil flow goes, through the Red Sea from the Suez Canal. So it's an incredibly strategic spot. So Sudan's quite important in that regard.
Do you think it's more likely that a power like Russia or China will step in to sort of help along negotiations because of their interests in Sudan, or do you think it's more likely that just sort of general dominance will be the deciding factor in the end?
Probably a bit of both. I don't want to all out say China or Russia, it's going to happen, because you look at some African countries and they've been in civil war for years and years and years and years. But yeah, I don't know. What could also possibly happen is that one side will just all out win, and Abdel will end up with Hemeti, and probably executing or something. Or the other way around. The thing with that is, like, if Hemeti starts losing, then Russia might, because Russia has links with Hemeti, they might come in to try broker a deal to support him or something along those lines. I don't know. I really don't know enough about the situation to comment in that regard, but that's that's my hunch. Yeah, and another cool thing, which I was really quite impressed about, was so Britain. Apparently, there's 4,000 British civilians in Sudan, which really took me by surprise.
Why?
Well, there's a number of diplomatic staff, like in the embassy and all of that. But as to the rest of them, I don't really know what they're doing there. So there's a large number of British civilians, and quite rapidly, the British military deployed the SAS, and they did this kind of epic nighttime raid.
Oh, I think I read about this. Yeah.
Yeah. They did this nighttime raid into the embassy, and like they were in and out before the Sudanese even knew what had happened, and took all of the embassy diplomatic staff with them. So I was really quite impressed by that. And everyone looks at the sorry state of the Western world, and the strikes paralyzing Britain, and 13 years of austerity and Tory government, and nothing works. And it's like, well, at least we have a crack military, best elite force, which can deploy from our Air Force base in Cyprus and get our important people out of Sudan quickly. So that's good.
That is good.
Yeah.
Speaking of your great love for Britain, Will, shall we move on to where you were this week?
Where I was. So, as I'm sure quite a few of the listeners might know, cards on the table, I'm an outright member of the Conservative Party in Britain, centre-right governing party. And we have a Scottish Conservative Party, and as I'm living in Aberdeen, I'm a member of that. And we recently had our Scottish Conservative Party conference. So this was over a day and a half in the lovely city of Glasgow. And yeah, it was last Friday and then half of last Saturday. So no, it was really good. It was filled with panel discussions and policy debates and speeches and exhibition stalls and meet and greets and lots of lovely food and lots of lovely alcohol. So I can't complain. It was quite good. I've never been to a political conference before, so that was nice as well. I suppose the main event was Rishi Sunak's speech, the Prime Minister's speech. So we were all kind of sitting in a big auditorium, and he came on, and he was very professional. He had lots of energy, lots of enthusiasm. Everyone else had been standing at the podium, but he was walking up and down the stage. He'd memorized his speech. He was using his hands. He was looking at everyone in the eyes. Like, if we were if the Conservatives were in opposition and he was our leader, I would have been, real happy. But the fact that have been in government for 13 years and are not looking very good at the next election, I'm kind of sad that his energy and enthusiasm is almost being wasted in that regard.
Yeah, the black mark left by his predecessors has unfortunately screwed him over a little bit.
Yeah, and he's kind of picking up the remains.
Yeah.
So yeah, bit of a shame in that regard, but oh well, life goes on. There was a speech from Rishi, Michael Gove. So if you don't know about Michael Gove, he's a minister who was brought in by David Cameron back in 2010, and he's probably one of the most competent and effective ministers in the past 13 years of the British government, and he's also a political survivor. So he's kind of, I'm pretty sure he's been in every single cabinet bar one, which, there's been quite a few cabinets over the last 13 years in Britain. And yeah, he's quite a funny guy. He was found by himself in an Aberdonian nightclub dancing. There's videos of it online. It's quite incredible stuff. And he also might have had a mild cocaine problem at some point in the past, so that's not great. But
who hasn't?
No. Who hasn't, exactly. But no, he was actually quite impressive. He was full of energy and enthusiasm and ideas and everything. Yeah, I mean, there were a few moments where, I mean, I'm quite cynical and I like to be a realist. So there were some moments on panel discussions where somewhat irrelevant people were sitting there just kind of sprouting out nonsense, which made no real sense at all.
Yeah.
In regards to, like, plans for the criminal justice system or, things like that. And it's we're at an odd stage at the moment in Britain because we have an election late next year, probably like autumn next year, and we're not close enough to it for people to start releasing their election manifestos and their plans.
Yeah.
But we're too far away from, so we're not close enough, but then we're kind of close enough to it for people to start talking about the election. So we're in an odd phase where people are like, we have all these vague ideas for the election, but we're not going to release what they really are.
Yeah.
Which is a bit frustrating.
Yes, it is.
But yeah, no, it was good.
Did you meet any interesting people in terms of other fellow members of the Conservatives?
So there was one guy who, again, if you're not, following British politics pretty deeply, you might not know him. So his name's Tom Tugendhat, and he's the securities minister, and him and we align quite similarly within the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
And he did one of the best speeches I've ever seen. So I saw that in person. But if you, dear listener, want to watch a very good speech in the House of Commons, if you put in Tom Tugendhat, Afghanistan, he does a brilliant speech on the withdrawal from Afghanistan because he is actually an ex-veteran. And I'm pretty sure he served in Iraq.
Yeah.
And he definitely served in Afghanistan. And he actually gets quite emotional about the British retreat or the Allied retreat out of Afghanistan and that it shouldn't have happened and has plunged the nation into chaos. So he's a very good speaker, and very, can use lulls in his voice and quite quiet moments for you to listen in and kind of, pick them out. So he's quite good. And I did have a chat with him. I got a picture with him as well. That was nice. I had probably one of my most embarrassing moments in my life so far. There's been a few of them. So he, I was quite nervous to talk to him, kind of a bit of an icon. And he comes, and I finally catch his eye, and he comes up to me, and we shake hands, and he's like, "Oh, hello, William." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, Mr. Tugendhat, how do you know my name?" And he was like, "Well, it says it on your name badge."
Oh my
I was just wearing a massive name badge. I was like, "Oh my god, why am I so stupid?" So that was quite embarrassing.
Oh, that's a classic one.
That's a classic. We had a good chat.
That's good. Yes.
So that was good. And then another little cool thing was that before he gave his little speech in that smaller scenario, I was standing next to him, and he was on his phone, and I looked down at his phone, and he got this message saying the package has arrived safely and securely. And then he responded saying, "Great!" exclamation mark. And I thought, well, this is odd. And then 10 minutes later, while he was giving his speech, he revealed to the crowd, or he leaked to the crowd that the Stone of Destiny, which, I mean, you can't get any better than this. The Stone of Destiny, which is this ancient Scottish stone, had been moved from Scotland down to London for the coronation. And pretty much this stone, which is like this slab of granite, I think. I've got a bumblebee at my window. Anyway, the stone of granite goes under the throne which Charles is going to be coronated on.
Right.
And it's this very symbolic. It has links to the Scottish monarchy, which as a united kingdom is very important. And I think the English actually stole it from the Scots, and it was held in England for ages until it was eventually moved back to Scotland. But it was just cool that I was able to see that message of the thing being moved, and then he revealed what it was, and all those cool things.
Indiana Jones kind of thing,
Yeah. Indeed, he's more or less Indiana Jones. So yeah.
Well, I was
there you go. Anyway.
I was going to ask you, you're a conservative man. I was listening to the Rest is Politics podcast this morning while I was doing my grocery shopping. And apparently, not just you, but us included, we're part of the Commonwealth. During the coronation, we're all encouraged to say out loud our Pledge of Allegiance to the King. Will you be doing this, Will?
Of course I will.
Wow. Well, I don't know. It seems a bit strange, but I also was learning that that it was originally just like dukes and stuff went up and pledged their allegiance, but because it's
the fact
we can broadcast it now because it's 70 years later. We're all encouraged to do it too in our living rooms. I mean, you'll be there.
Yeah,
I'll be watching from home. Maybe I will say it then. I was feeling a little bit embarrassed, but you know.
No, yeah. I mean, people are like, "Oh, this is such an arcane ritual." You know, it's so demoralizing, and it's all about hierarchy. It's like, well, actually, this the fact that everyone's allowed to say it now is like a liberal progression of the tradition. Like, you didn't used to be able to pledge your allegiance to the king, and now you can. Like, come on. It used to be like, dukes and earls, and
The thing that got me is it's pledge allegiance to the king and all of his predecessors or something, if I'm not mistaken. So, well, I would encourage everyone to at least watch the coronation. No matter where you are, it'll be interesting. A big part of history. Even if you're not into the monarchy, it will be something that you will want to be a part of. I guarantee it.
Yeah. I mean, and the British, we might send the SAS into Sudan pretty well, but damn, do we put on a coronation?
Yes.
We're very good at the public events and the pomp and circumstance ceremony. So that's, I would 100%, whether you're a monarchist or not. I mean, I'd like to say it's a once-in-a-lifetime event, but with the age of Charles, the kids our age, it'll probably be a twice-in-a-lifetime event.
It's still not that often, you know.
No. Definitely give it a watch. Definitely give it a watch. But so you will be able to publicly pledge your allegiance to His Majesty, which will be quite brilliant. For those who don't know, I will be in London when it happens, and I'm actually quite nervous if we're all in London watching the big screen, and there's this chant, just all of London starts chanting this oath to the king. That would be quite incredible.
Yeah, it's going to be quite something. Now moving across the pond to the US of A. I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago now we were on break and then we did our China episode, but Joe Biden, JB, he has announced he will be running for president again in 2024. What are your thoughts on this, Will? I'm sure you have some about a very, very old man who no one really likes running again. Except for me. I like him, but no one else does.
I mean, it seems like no one else does. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, bottom line is, he is an old guy. He's really quite old. And he is doing, I would say, probably the busiest, most stressful job you can possibly ever do. I mean, once you reach President of the United States of America, you kind of, that's it. You can't go much further. So he's really, what, is he going to be 86 by the end of his term if he survives?
Oh, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
See, here's my thoughts, though. Though he is an old man, and this is going to sound awfully, almost conservative of me, but I like the idea of having someone in the White House who's been there for a really long time and really understands how everything works and how things function. And we've seen how he's managed to use these sort of ideas and these realistic expectations to actually push through a lot of meaningful legislation. But I mean, no matter what, you kind of do need someone with a bit higher of a level of charisma leading. So I wonder if Joe Biden could possibly theoretically step back into a more sort of bureaucratic role, while someone maybe a bit younger with a bit more charisma could actually go for the more sort of ceremonial role of president. I don't know.
Damn. Wait, as in, you think a different Democrat should run?
Yeah, but I wouldn't be able to tell you who, because I mean,
who is that?
I mean, the Democrats, they're either Joe Biden or they're people that are very thoroughly unlikable. No offense to them, but that charisma I'm talking about doesn't really exist in the Democratic Party as it sits today.
Yeah, I mean, whatever happened to JFK? I mean, that man had charisma. Probably too much.
Too much charisma.
I mean, the CIA definitely had too much charisma.
It was mind-blowing how much charisma he had.
Oh, God. We're on a roll this one. So, yeah, I don't know. Old Joe. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, yeah, I agree with you about having a guy in the White House who's been there forever and ever and knows everything inside out. But the other side of things is like, I'm worried that he'll be so old that the advantage he'd get from knowing how things work so well, he just won't actually have the mental capacity to utilize that knowledge of knowing how things work so well. I don't know. And then the other side of things, of course, Kamala Harris will be his VP, and if he passes away and she becomes president, she's like, I don't think I've ever known a politician to be so unpopular. And I haven't really done much research into Kamala Harris, but I don't really know why she's so unpopular. She just doesn't. I don't know. I mean, do you know much about her?
She's very much of that, like, sort of, you know, when you think of like a modern business place and you sort of think of the higher up there being this sort of quasi-progressive, but really it's kind of like hiding this like really corporate sort of undertones. That's the sort of the idea of why she's so, I mean, I'm sure there's deeper to it than that, but it's this like, just sort of establishment candidate that hides behind a sort of a progressive ideology, which people don't particularly, and it's like very, very transparent.
Okay.
But thinking about it, I forgot about my boy Bernie. That would I'd be quite happy with him, although it's not going to happen, is it? Because I would.
Would you?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
he's crazy, Tiago.
Of course, you say that, Will.
He's very. I mean, I don't want to be rude, but he is. I mean, he is quite left wing.
He is quite left wing, and that's why I think he would never actually get in, because you wouldn't be able to. And in all honesty, if Joe was younger, I would prefer Joe over Bernie. But Bernie has the sort of hard-hitting leadership skills, as well with majority of policies that I think are necessary that would make a great leader. But unfortunately, you're not going to get someone that sort of left, or what does he call himself, a democratic socialist, into the White House. It's just not going to happen.
No.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it.
Yeah. Now, I was actually listening to an interview with Bernie Sanders. And that was actually The Rest is Politics again. They did an interview with him, which was quite good. And I didn't know anything about him going into it. And he has quite an interesting life story. Growing up kind of impoverished in New York, and then moving to Vermont and living in this tiny little town in Vermont, and like not, politically not really getting anywhere for 30 years and get tiny percentages of the vote. And then off a whim kind of running for mayor of this tiny little town in Vermont, and then becoming the mayor and implementing kind of real life policies and that you could see happening in front of you in this little town and trying to make it as best as you can. I mean, I quite enjoyed and quite liked his kind of very, his hard work and humble rise from low beginnings, and his genuine connection to people. I mean, policy-wise and politically, we're almost polar opposite. But,
Yeah.
As a person, he seems like something of a decent lad.
Yeah, he does, but yeah, I wonder if I think he could do a lot of good, but I don't think he would because I think he has too much integrity. But I think if he sort of dulled down his views a bit, and made himself have a bit more mainstream appeal, I feel like he could do a lot of good work. But as I said, when you get someone with such a ideology that's so central to their being, you don't often see that sort of grifting, I guess, or becoming popular in that sort of way. But anyway, it'll be interesting. I wonder, what are your thoughts on the just in general on the US election next year? Who do you think's in for a chance?
I don't know. I mean, you got to be pretty brave to predict the U.S. election,
especially of recent times.
Yeah, in the last 10 years, you got to be pretty brave. So I'm not, and I honestly do not know enough to comment. In regards to the way the polls are going and everything. I think Trump had, his name was dirtied quite a bit, and Ron DeSantis was getting quite popular, and Biden did far better than everyone expected in the midterms, and there was kind of this, lesser Trump, pro-Democrat kind of sigh of relief and kind of resurgence. But now, I don't know, the amount of attention the media's given Trump because of this whole Stormy Daniels trial, I think currently he's more popular than Ron DeSantis with the Republicans, and will, probably receive the Republican nomination, in which case we'll just have a Trump versus Biden thing again.
Yeah.
And seeing how close it was last time, and we've got a year to go, who knows what will happen.
Yeah. It's funny. The difference being, I'd say, is there is this cult-like following for a Trump presidency, which there isn't in the Democrats.
No.
Which is kind of what's sort of been predicted to happen in 2016, where people were saying that Democrats didn't feel strongly about Hillary Clinton, so they just didn't show up to vote, whereas all these people felt extremely strongly about Donald Trump, and it showed. And then in the last election, it seemed like almost a reaction to what happened in 2016, where people were going, "Oh, if we don't want this guy in, we need to step up and vote as well, even if we're not huge fans of Joe Biden." And I wonder if now that some of it's sort of died down a bit, people don't like Joe Biden even more. If those people who came out just to stop Trump from winning are still going to come out. But, it's impossible. We won't know until the day that it happens. But it will be interesting to follow. If there's one thing you can say about American politics, it is definitely entertaining. Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, I would once I mean, what Trump's done to the Republican Party, I mean, it's not even, you were saying about the cult following, it's not even really the Republican Party anymore, it's the Trump Party.
No, but I do think if Trump was to endorse someone, if he didn't get through, then all his followers would flow to them to vote for them. Yeah. I mean, the Republican. I see what you mean. That'll be interesting. I mean, the day when Trump and Biden are gone and pass away, it'll almost, hopefully some new, fresh American political leaders will actually
bring some peace to the kind of political turmoil of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard of Pete Buttigieg?
I don't know anything about him, but just in passing.
He was. I quite liked him in the 2020. I quite liked him in the 2020 race. He was a Democrat. He was young. Pretty sure he was more moderate. And he was also gay as well. So that was interesting, I guess. But he didn't kind of virtue signal or anything with it. It just kind of came along and was mentioned every now and then. And he seemed quite competent as well. Just a good kind of manager and a good campaigner. So I like Pete Buttigieg. I think he would be a good kind of fresh face for the Democrats. And then there's another guy. Who was it? Was it JFK's nephew? I think is running for the Democrat nomination.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. But obviously he's he's Catholic, which is interesting, being the JFK connection. And then I think he's also against the vaccine.
Right.
The COVID vaccine. So that will be interesting as well. And it would be pretty disastrous if the Democrats didn't nominate Joe Biden. Yeah. Also, another little random fact: if Trump becomes president again, he'll be only the second president ever to serve 2 terms divided.
Oh, really?
By a single term. Yeah, there's only one other president who's ever done that, whose name escapes me because he's obscure and no one ever remembers it.
There's a Family Guy joke about that guy, about how he's obscure. Yeah. They do a bank robbery and they're all dressed up as obscure presidents, and then he's like, "Did you know I was the only president to run 2 non-consecutive terms?" So there you go.
Hey, there's a Family Guy clip of I don't even know what the context is because I've only seen the clip, but it's like a video of Benjamin Disraeli, who was a British Prime Minister, and it's just Benjamin Disraeli writing at a desk, and then he looks up, and then he's like, "You don't even know who I am," because Benjamin writing on his desk. I really appreciate Family Guy and The Simpsons for that quite cynical, sarcastic comedy of pointing out political things which people don't know.
And it's just like calling you out on the fact that you don't know what it is as well. It's great.
And the people running the show definitely wouldn't have known either.
Yeah,
They've done the research. Pointed out. It's kind of, it's like one of the. Americans usually aren't that good at humbling themselves and taking the piss out of themselves, but Family Guy and The Simpsons seem to do that quite well.
They both started as a sort of like parody of the American family, right? The whole thing was a critique of America as a whole. And so you just get these like every now and again awesome jokes that ring very true.
Yeah. No, it is good.
The difference I've found with The Simpsons and South Park, which is another political satire cartoon, is The Simpsons and Family Guy are both quite subtle about their messaging, whereas South Park, it's like right up in your face. And I don't know, I've come to appreciate the subtleness of something like Simpsons. But I think that it's quite funny because you had the idea of Homer Simpson is this man with a house and 2 cars, but he's a baffling idiot because the satire there was that anyone in America can get anything super easily. And as times have changed since the 80s when they first started writing those shows, it doesn't apply so much anymore, and it might be quite lost in a modern audience.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Is The Simpsons still going?
Yes, I think they all are. Simpsons, Family Guy, South Park, they're all still going.
Yeah.
Simpsons is almost in its 40th season, I think.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just keep living.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Have you seen the trailer for Oppenheimer?
I have, yes. The what's his name?
Cillian Murphy.
No, the director, the guy that did Tenet and Batman and
yeah. I'm gonna Google this.
This is really annoying me. I keep going to say Patrick Bateman, but that's a gross mental leap that I've made there that doesn't really make much sense.
No, it's it is Christopher Nolan.
Oh, Christopher Nolan. Yeah. What do you reckon, Will? How do you think it's gonna be?
I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, the style of the trailer. I mean, the trailer itself is a cinematic masterpiece. Yeah, no, I think Christopher Nolan, like his dramatic, kind of on the edge of your seat, but in a very kind of stylish, classy, not overdone, quite realistic way, combined with Cillian Murphy's just austere, acting potential, combined with, I mean, the construction of an atomic weapon was a fundamental turning point in the history of humanity, and for a Western democratic nation to put people's taxes into developing this weapon. I mean, it's really quite in regards to morality and ethics, it's quite a questionable thing, and not enough people really think about or question the fact that it was a free Western democratic nation alliance which put all the effort into researching this thing.
Yeah.
So to have Christopher Nolan combined with the acting skills of deep dark acting skills of Cillian Murphy, combined with this morally scrupulous, fundamental turning point in humanity, you put all those things together, I think it's going to be brilliant.
Yes, yeah, I'm excited for it as well.
Yeah. I mean,
do you think it's going to stay historically accurate, or do you think they're gonna venture off a bit, or do you think it'll be something like what's it called, Chernobyl, where it's pretty on the mark but it's dramatized?
I don't know. It'll probably be dramatized. It's an interesting thing, because I think wasn't Einstein. Probably getting my history wrong here, but I think Einstein was asked to help with the bomb or something.
I think
refused.
He did a lot of research, and I could also be getting this wrong, that he didn't think was for a nuclear weapon. He thought it was for something else, and then when he found out, he refused to continue doing research. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of interesting things happening with I love how Einstein's just thrown into the story of the nuclear weapon. I always forget about that.
Yeah, that's an and then I think there's this is going really bizarre, but I think Einstein and Oppenheimer once played a chess match with each other, and there's a historical record of the moves they did in chess.
Oh my gosh.
So,
I could so see Christopher Nolan doing a chess scene between them, but as they're saying their moves, they're making their moves in real life. I could see that scene so easily.
So we've got Cillian Murphy playing the other guy. Who would you play as who would you get to play Einstein?
Oh my god.
Who is the best Einstein actor?
You'd need to if if Morgan Freeman was the right if Morgan Freeman wasn't an African American man.
I did not see that coming. Okay.
Who would you put as Einstein?
Maybe. Who was that guy? In Joker.
Yeah.
Actually, that might be an interesting Oppenheimer.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix, he might, if you just fattened him up a little bit, maybe, and shortened him, he could do a good Einstein. But no, who was the talk show host in the Joker?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I don't know who. The one that he shoots.
Yeah, the one that he. Whoa, Tiago.
Spoilers for Joker. There's only a billion memes out there that spoil that specific.
Oh my god. If you haven't watched Joker yet, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, come on. If you haven't watched Joker yet, it's because you didn't want to watch Joker, which is, pretty understandable.
Yeah, hold on. So, it is. Oh, where is his name? Hold on. Cast. Robert De Niro.
Ah, yeah.
Surely Robert De Niro could play a good
Einstein. I feel like Bernie Sanders could play a good Einstein. Okay, I think this is our cue to wrap it up.
Hold on. What about the Barbie movie? We haven't even gotten onto the Barbie movie yet.
Okay, the Barbie movie. Are you excited for the Barbie movie, Will?
I sure am. Actually, I was talking to a girl at the conservative thing, and she was telling me how she reads into movies, like the current box office releases, as a reflection on the psyche of the Western world. So I was like, okay, well, currently you've got the Mario movie and the Dungeons and Dragons movie, and she was like, yeah, it means escapism. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, well, and then I was like, what about Barbie movie and Oppenheimer? They're coming out around the same time. Like, what's happening with the Western world there?
Well, everyone wants to feel sad, but they want a bit of relief afterwards. I think that's what we're.
Yeah.
What do you?
Isn't? No, she was telling me that the director of the Barbie movie is like this quite politically in tune lady whose name escapes me, but so. This girl was saying that maybe the Barbie movie was going to be like a critique on capitalism or something.
I mean, it's supposed to be like a sort of parody of the whole Barbie thing, so maybe she's not off. Yeah.
And it is more so aimed at like an adult audience. Is it?
Yes. Looking from the trailers, it seems like a movie you could take your kids to, but most of it's going to go over their heads. Like they're talking about having a beach off and how they're going to beach each other off, which was interesting. And also, you don't do a kids movie and then cast Ryan Gosling as Ken.
Why not? What?
He's not very I don't know. You'd cast someone big and lovable in a kids movie, like I don't know, John Cena. He's cool. The Rock.
Wait, why isn't Ryan Gosling? He's cute.
He's not hip with the kids. He's like hip with the 40-year-old men. Was he in La La Land?
Yeah, he was the main guy in La La Land. I don't know. I see that as pretty.
Is that a kids movie though? That's still not like, Barbie.
Okay, fine. I kind of get your point.
But we all know why you'll be seeing the Barbie movie, Will, and it's the lead lady, Margaret Robbie.
Yeah. Anyway, so Oppenheimer.
Actually, speaking of Margaret Robbie, I saw a movie. This very political podcast today.
Yeah.
It was called
Suicide Squad?
No, not Suicide Squad.
Wolf of Wall Street?
No, not Wolf of Wall Street. Not Barcelona, but no.
She played
it was like this weird
writer of Winnie the Pooh.
Oh my god. It was this weird piece about the movement from a silent film to film with not silent.
Oh, Talkie, yeah, with
who else was in it? I don't know, like everyone was in it. And yeah, it was
everyone.
Actually yeah, well, when you see a surprise cameo from Spider-Man in your films, you know that everyone's in this movie. And it was actually, I wish I could remember what it was called, but it was a pretty interesting movie with like some of the best music in a movie I've ever heard. And she was very good in that. Obviously fantastic in The Wolf of Wall Street. And quite annoying in the Suicide Squad movies. So we'll see how this one
Wasn't
goes.
everyone quite annoying in the Suicide Squad
Well,
movies?
the second one was good, but Margaret Robbie was... I keep calling her Margaret Robbie. Margaret Robbie was still quite annoying.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And apparently that actor who played the Joker was just annoying as a person.
Yes, sending, use condoms with rats in them or something to cast members is not appropriate behavior, I would say.
Yeah. That's right, buddy. You heard it from Tiago.
I'm taking a stance.
Ah, dear. Okay.
Okay.
Well, we should probably wrap
This
it
has
up
devolved
now.
into chaos, so we should wrap things up. From Joe Biden to dead rats, you've been listening to the Fence Sitters podcast.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, subscribe, follow us on everything. Please follow us on Facebook. We have 3 followers there.
5.
5 at the most. And I don't want to pay the money because the only way to get word out about Facebook is boosted by $5. So how about everyone who's listening now goes onto Facebook and follows the Fence Sitters Facebook page, and maybe I'll be inclined to post more there.
Then when we get no followers, we'll realize that no one's listening to the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for the support on the last episode. It did really well. The other thing I wanted to bring up was there's 4 comments on it. I can only see 2, and then I can see the other 2 in editor mode. And it seems like YouTube is hiding our negative comments. Which I don't really want.
Don't we have to approve them?
I didn't have anywhere to approve them or anything. It just... So, I don't know, if anyone knows anything about that, I don't really want our negative comments to be hidden, because it kind of looks like we're just deleting negative comments. But, yeah. Thank you for listening. Email in. Go follow Facebook, please.
And brutal invasion
We'll
of
see you
Iraq.
next week.
Of Ukraine.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.